Support for today's episode comes from Amazon. Amazon is working toward a carbon-free energy future, doing more with less, investing where it matters most, and supporting communities where we operate. Energy officials urge EU to delay methane rule timeline. The energy ministers of Qatar, the United States, Nigeria, and Algeria jointly warned the EU on June 24th that key compliance pathways under the EU methane regulation, EUMR, remain undefined ahead of January 2027 import requirements and called for a pause in implementation while those details are resolved. The open letter, addressed to the President of the European Commission, the President of the European Council, and EU member state leaders, was signed by Saad Sharita Al-Kaabi, Qatar's Minister of State for Energy Affairs, Chris Wright, U.S. Secretary of Energy, Ekper Ekpo, Nigeria's Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Gas, and Mohamed Arkab, Algeria's Minister of Hydrocarbons. The four countries collectively supply significant volumes of liquefied natural gas, LNG, and pipeline gas to European markets. The signatories said they support the EU's goals around energy security, sustainability, and reliable supply, but warned that the current absence of legal certainty is already affecting energy contracting decisions. According to the U.S. Department of Energy's announcement of the letter, the officials stated directly, importers have already begun the process of purchasing oil and natural gas that will be stored for delivery in 2027, and as of now, there is no viable path to compliance with the regulation. What the letter asks the EU to do before 2027. The officials made three specific requests: a stop-the-clock mechanism that would pause the relevant implementation timeline while methodologies and compliance pathways are developed, a request for grandfathering protections for new contracts signed during the transition period so that agreements reached before additional legislative changes are completed are not later exposed to unexpected compliance obligations, for the EU to remove penalties for noncompliance during the transitional period. The concern underlying all three requests is the same. Long-term LNG and gas contracts can span multiple years and are valued in the tens of billions of euros. Without defined compliance pathways, exporters and importers face legal and financial exposure when negotiating supply agreements because neither party knows what the compliance standard will require when delivery occurs. The officials argued that this uncertainty is not a matter of disagreement with the regulation's goals, but with its implementation timeline. The supply risk numbers behind the letter's timing is supported by independent analysis. According to a Wood Mackenzie study published in March and commissioned by the International Association of Oil and Gas Producers, IOGP, if the EUMR is implemented in its current form, up to 87% of the EU's crude oil imports and 43% of its natural gas imports could be considered non-compliant as early as January 2027. The study estimated that the EU's annual oil import bill would increase by $17 billion under that scenario, with a projected 24% rise in gasoline prices and a 16% increase in diesel prices. It also projected that as many as 40 European refineries could shut down between 2027 and 2030 due to a shortage of compliant crude supplies. The IOGP is an industry advocacy organization, and its commissioned research should be read in that context, though the scale of the projected impact has been cited by multiple parties in the ongoing policy debate. The EU's response and what comes next. EU Energy Commissioner Dan Jorgensen, speaking to reporters shortly before the letter was published, said he was open to discussions on easing implementation, but would not reduce the regulation's ambition. "I will not reopen it. I'm very proud of our methane regulation," Jorgensen told reporters, according to Gulf Times. The dispute reflects a broader tension that will continue to shape energy procurement into 2027 and beyond. Governments and companies broadly agree on the need to reduce methane emissions. The disagreement here is about whether the technical infrastructure for compliance, the monitoring, reporting, and verification methodologies and implementing details can be made ready in time for the January 2027 deadline. For energy buyers, compliance officers, and procurement teams sourcing LNG or pipeline gas with EU delivery obligations, the outcome of this debate will have direct implications for contract terms, pricing, and supply certainty in the second half of 2026 and into next year. Sustainability Soundbites energy coverage is sponsored by Amazon. Visit the link in our show notes to learn more about Amazon's Spotlight on Energy. For sponsorship opportunities with Environment and Energy Leader, please reach out to a member of our team.